And now we're joined with Stephanie, who had to overcome her own barriers to abortion care. Stephanie, please share your story when you're ready.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be in this space and share among all of you my story and my experience. And there's a lot of parallels between Jane's story and mine, where I also had to get a judicial bypass when I was 17 to have access to my abortion. I also had to have an ultrasound, meet with my attorney several times, and collect documents and prepare a court case. And from the time I found out I was pregnant to the time I was actually able to obtain my abortion, it took me 3 weeks. 3 weeks that I scraped money together working as a waitress. 3 weeks where I wondered if I was actually going to be able to have an abortion, to have the health care that I needed for my future. And I knew I couldn't tell my parents. I knew that I would be unsafe. And like Jane, I was in an unfortunate situation that I was alone. And I share my story because when I was 17, I couldn't tell anybody that I was pregnant. I couldn't tell anybody that this was what I was going through, and I felt so alone. And I hope that in continuing to share my story and other people sharing their stories as well, that if people see this and they are pregnant, or if they know someone who may be pregnant, that they feel comfortable saying something to them and feeling like they'll be supported and safe and affirmed for the decisions that they needed to make with their body. When I had my abortion, I had started college early. I was in dual enrollment in high school, and I knew my future. At the time I wanted to be an attorney, and now I'm a social worker. And it's because of these decisions that I was able to make, and I was able to graduate with my bachelor's degree, and 2 years later, and then I got my master's degree. And coming from a low-income family and being the first person in my family to go to college or to even have a master's degree, those things wouldn't have happened. My future would have been set, that I would have been a young mother. And though I may have been able to go to college and do all those things, the world makes it so much more difficult. Childcare is inaccessible, healthcare is inaccessible, low-wage jobs that you can't have unless you have a degree. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So I'm glad that I did, and I made the best decision for me, and I don't regret it.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your story. And I know there's definitely 16 and 17-year-olds out there watching you right now and seeing you as an inspiration. It's really an honor for you to share your story with us. And, it really is horrific to imagine 16 and 17-year-olds have to going in front of a judge to plead their case. And the alternative is that if the judge says you aren't mature enough to have an abortion, the alternative is then you have a child. So it's really a challenging and difficult process, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Why did you decide to tell your story with us today?
So I do abortion storytelling through We Testify, which is a program of the National Network of Abortion Funds. And We Testify really works to amplify the abortion stories of marginalized people and people of color, to change the narrative around who has abortions. We know that the majority of people who have abortions are people of color, people living in marginalized situations. And when you go so far as to discuss minors having abortions and needing judicial bypasses, the majority of youth tell their parents that they need to have an abortion. And it's the subset of minors and youth who just don't have the privilege of being able to do that and would be unsafe. And that's why we have to keep these kinds of doors open. And hopefully remove parental notification involvement laws altogether. But as a We Testify storyteller, I feel that it is my duty to continue to share my story, and for people who look like me, people who are like me, people who are in situations like me, to know that there's something ahead for them, and that like you're not alone. And it feels like you are alone when you're in that situation, and you feel so stigmatized by people who are supposed to love you. And yeah, that's why I shared.
And is there anything else you would like to say to the 16, 17-year-olds and the Janes who might be watching today?
Janes, you are loved. Your experiences are affirmed by all of these people in this room, and you will never be alone. And sometimes it feels like we're navigating this world on our own, and I know I felt that way when I needed to go to that judge and drive myself to the courthouse and plead my case, and feel like I didn't know how I could do it, and I was able to get through it. And I hope that through storytelling and through people advocating for this, that abortion is normalized, and that Janes don't have to feel like they are alone in this, that they can tell somebody that they trust, they can tell their teacher, they can tell somebody who's going to support them and affirm the decision that they want, and if they want to continue a pregnancy or not. So yeah, that's what I have to say to Janes.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks so much again for being with us today.